Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today I'm coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And then if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can learn about the evolution of the industry over time, identify some top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and then take advantage whenever you're ready. So we're going to start with some great news, official news that Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont has just signed a cannabis legalization bill into law as of yesterday. The new law takes effect on July 1st, and according to Tom Engel, this is the fourth state to legalize cannabis so far this year. Now that's great news, but if I think about it, isn't it Arizona, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico, Virginia, Connecticut? That's a little more than four, but regardless, it's good for the cannabis industry. So that's positive news. I wanted to start off with that. Now we're going to jump to Mexico because it's been a minute since we've heard any sort of update out of their side. But Mexico's Supreme Court moves to end cannabis prohibition itself after lawmakers fail to act. So let's read into this. As Mexico's Supreme Court has taken a step towards ending cannabis prohibition nationally after the legislature failed to enact the policy change by a court-imposed deadline. Minister Norma Lucia Pina Hernandez, who serves on the High Court, recently filed a general declaration of unconstitutionality with respect to Mexico's cannabis laws, and the body is expected to take up the issue on Monday, probably next Monday. This comes nearly 3 years after the Supreme Court first deemed the prohibition on personal cannabis possession and cultivation unconstitutional, ordering lawmakers to institute a change. But while lawmakers have advanced legislation in the years since, they have yet to approve a final bill. Now, advocates are encouraged that the court is taking this action, which would nullify parts of the Mexican Constitution that criminalize people over cannabis, but they've emphasized that this does absolve legislators of their responsibility to develop regulations for a program of adult use cannabis production and sales, which would effectively decriminalize cannabis so that you would not go to jail, but advocates seem to think that that would absolve these legislators from actually having to create regulations for a program of production and sale. Not saying that they won't, but that seems to be what advocates are afraid of. The step the court is taking increases the responsibility of the legislative branch in this matter. Regulation Por la Paz says in the press release on Tuesday, according to a translation, it is necessary to continue the legislative process so that the work that has been invested to date is consolidated in the modifications necessary to guarantee the rights of citizenship. So still a work in progress. 8 ministers in the Supreme Court will have to vote in favor of passing the Declaration of Unconstitutionality in order for prohibition to be overturned. Now, so it seems like advocates are afraid that the legislators aren't going to follow through with what they've done, but it seems like they've done a lot of work and there's no reason why they wouldn't. Regardless, this is the update that we have as of right now. So hopefully soon cannabis will just become decriminalized in Mexico, but then we hope that the legislators and the lawmakers in Mexico will carry on with their side of the bargain and actually make a regulatory framework. Now, on to this article. New report finds first-time cannabis use surging among women and Gen Z. As Forbes highlights, first-time cannabis users are diving into their new habit with unparalleled gusto, according to a new study. 50% of new consumers are indulging in cannabis 5 or more days per week, while 22% of new consumers are using multiple times per day. Also, female cannabis consumers skew younger and are heavier users than men. These findings come from a newly published U.S. Cannabis Consumer Trends report conducted and compiled by the Brightfield Group, a Chicago-based CBD and cannabis-focused market researcher. These findings are among several that also examine federal legalization as well as the implications of the Safe Banking Act, a measure that would allow banks to work with legal cannabis businesses with prosecution. So you can obviously grab a copy by putting your email in here. Otherwise, you can grab the link below, and it's a great report that doesn't look at monetary figures, but it looks at data trends in human behavior and how it's moving towards being more cannabis friendly, which is great, especially when you're investing in fundamentals. One of the main pillars of fundamentals is looking at human behavior, so that's awesome to hear. Geography also plays a key role in the demographics of new users. The portion of female cannabis users steadily rose through 2020, but varied by state. For instance, 59% of cannabis consumers in Michigan were women, but interestingly enough, in a blue state of California, it was only 43%. Jamie Shao, Senior Insights Manager at Brightfield Group, said the expanded gender-balanced demographics of cannabis usage is showing normalization, increase in popularity, and diversity. In addition to the surge in usage among women, 6% of recreational cannabis consumers in 2020 were new users, while 22% were Gen Zers. This is an important departure from the classic cannabis consumer profile, says Shao, and those participating in the space will benefit from adapting to the evolving marketplace. Plus, as for federal legalization, the study found that even though considerable momentum momentum has picked up in this area after the Democratic Party gained control of the presidency and Congress in the 2020 election. The process will continue to be incremental, which is for the best for cannabis investors. I know it's hard right now to swallow, but you want this to take as long as possible, which means we see more and more cycles so that you can get in low, sell some high, get back in low, sell some high. It's going to take a long time because the federal government is experiencing an awkward, slow path towards decriminalization. But good news, the report predicted that the Safe Banking Act will be the next legal benchmark in the history of this space, which is essentially what all of our sources have told us up to this point as well. The law will provide more opportunities for major players to enter the industry or expand their footprint in the landscape, and may also encourage more states to legalize cannabis, especially when functional banking is in place and states can see what they're missing out on tax revenue and jobs. So that's great news. And then on top of that, this article is behind a paywall, but I wanted to bring it up from the American Banker, highlighting sort of the progress and what we're seeing towards the sentiment of safe banking as regional banks, credit unions begin lending to pot firms. All we can see is this, but it's just going to highlight the fact that the narrative towards cannabis and allowing banks to work with these companies is certainly changing as well. As loans to cannabis companies, long taboo even at banks and credit unions that take deposits from cannabis firms, are finally gaining a degree of mainstream acceptance. A handful of insured depository institutions, including 2 banks with more than $40 billion of assets, have started offering credit in states where the drug is legal, according to interviews with lenders and industry consultants as well as publicly available information. The newfound openness to lending comes as the U.S. cannabis industry continues to mature and builds off a heftier financial track record. Some banks and credit unions have been accepting deposits from pot companies in recent years in accordance with stringent federal guidelines, which has given them an unusually deep understanding of those businesses' cash flow. And so far, it seems like anyone that's financially literate and looks at these companies does really like what they see. So just wanted to highlight that. Now on to some information from Todd Harrison, providing some new price targets from Craig Hallum. As we take a look, Trulieve Cannabis Corp. currently priced at $37 USD on the OTC, giving it a price target of $80 after CT legalization adds to tailwinds. As Florida growth continues full steam ahead, reiterate buy rating and $80 price target. So as we saw, Kim Rivers bought the dip last week at about $35. Once that price hits 70, her 1 million has turned into 2 million. That is how you buy and hold for the long run. On to Green Thumb Industries, their current price rate now, is $29.06, price target of 60 cents. Due to the tri-state trifecta updating model following passage of Connecticut legalization, reiterating buy rating and a $60 price target. And last but not least, Curaleaf Holdings, current price is $13.50 with a price target of 21 as the tri-state trifecta as part of it. Updating model following passage of CT legalization and recent Florida data, reiterating buy rating and $21 price target. As I think it was mentioned in the last video that I did on This Week in Cannabis on Sunday, it seems that Green Thumb, Trulieve, and Curaleaf all have a footprint in Connecticut as well. So that's good news to see those updates. And another one from Todd is big time Ernst & Young news report on U.S. cannabis is coming. Ask him how he knows. Well, they interviewed him for his expertise. And as Ernst & Young is a global firm that focuses, I believe, on tax preparation, as this cannabis industry looks to become a taxed industry like any others, they obviously want to learn how to take advantage. And this is a great question to ask yourself during these times. When the ground beneath your feet starts shifting, will you stand still or leap forward? And so I just want to highlight some of the quotes that he mentioned on here because they're all true. A currently estimated $300 billion, primarily illicit, global market is moving into the regulated and taxable realm. This market consists primarily of dry flower and doesn't account for the oncoming market of diverse consumer packaged goods. As more regulated markets open up, consumption rates should significantly grow as new consumers are exposed to cannabinoids in different form factors, extracted CPG products, and across new distribution networks. So the questions they pose is, our view of the addressable market broad enough? Probably not, and it's likely bigger than we can all imagine. What critical innovations will create new market opportunities for us? That is extracting the compounds and using it in CPG products like edibles, drinks, and other things like that, health and wellness. And third, how can we proactively build optionality into our strategy, knowing that the cannabis industry is going to grow into way more than just consuming to get stoned, as it's going to touch into many different areas: human biology, medicine and data, genetics, production, business, capital equipment, digital, product form factor and format, performance, devices and delivery systems, most importantly, customer education. So the last quote, most institutional investors and high net worth investors are prohibited from investing in the cannabis space due to legal or regulatory impediments. As these legal and banking barriers resolve and the cannabis space opens, institutions will likely chase growth. With all potential use cases added together, an approximate 1 trillion potential global annual revenue market is visible on the horizons versus an approximate estimated 140 billion in aggregate current public cannabis-related market cap. So again, when you take the mindset shift away from just smoking to get stoned or for medicine, that goes from 140 billion to a much larger market. And Todd was featured on this podcast, episode 352 of Canna Insider, A Wave of Capital is Heading for Cannabis. Insider gives details. So I definitely recommend listening to this. I listened to it the other night on one of my walks, and it was great. Again, just to learn more about Todd, his views on it, and his history too. So definitely recommend listening to this if you are invested in the space. On to an update from MJ Stock Trader, as two Cresco insiders sold 1 million shares each at $12.50 Canadian privately, which likely explains some of the Cresco Labs pain we've seen this month. And so obviously as a shareholder, I've been watching it. However, I've changed what I've previously said and decided that I will only buy if the price drops to $12 or below. I know I was saying 13 before, but my average price is $16.83, and I really want to get that below 16 and into the 15 range. In order to get there, I need to buy shares below 12. If I don't get there, then that's totally fine. I still think I will make money in time, but that's sort of my new threshold to get under, because I want to at least make sure if I'm spending more money, I'm getting down to a much lower average price. But regardless, do you think this is good or do you think this is bad? Now, it's worth knowing, as a Cresco shareholder, which I do, Dominic Sergey and Robert Sampson are founders of the company. So they've been around for the long run. So the fact that they're selling some shares now at $12.50, as opposed to selling in February or March, actually does make me very confident, because they could have easily sold then. But the fact that they're selling now tells me it's more just for, getting paid for the work that they've put in. That's at least my view, so I just wanted to share that. But at least we can see that they've sold a large portion of what they do own, but again, they are founders of the company, no longer with it anymore, I believe, as just wanted to reference this down here. Sergey is the former board member who was replaced in April by Tariq Brooks, the man responsible for managing Sean Diddy Combs' business operations investments buy on weakness. So yeah, what this shows us is that, let's say Sergey, who's no longer with the company, decided to lock in and get paid for all the work he did in building this company. And that's okay. So he gets paid, and we see the price go down, but this does not mean that the company's performing any worse on the ground or take away from their growth in sales, as I'm very excited to continue watching the quarterly releases and see what these companies can do. But on top of that, Cresco does announce opening of Sunnyside, Philadelphia, its 4th dispensary in Pennsylvania, and its 33rd operating U.S. store. I commend our retail, real estate, and community integration teams for their outstanding work in the opening of another Sunnyside location that will help grow our presence in the 6th largest U.S. city, said Charlie Bachtel, Cresco Labs CEO and co-founder. Our Sunnyside retail platform continues to outpace industry averages on per-store retail metrics, thanks to our team's ability to open in the best locations, secure an array of products to serve a breadth of consumer needs, and deliver an excellent customer experience. We're delighted to begin bringing the Sunnyside retail experience to medical patients in downtown Philly. While Sunnyside, Philadelphia will feature 10 points of sales with more than 5,500 square feet of space and an array of medical cannabis products displayed by form and function. Patients can place orders online, browse live inventory through sunnyside.shop, and pick up orders in store the same day. But this is the best part to highlight. In addition to its retail network in Pennsylvania, Cresco Labs continues to distribute its portfolio of branded products to 100% of dispensaries throughout the state. So they don't need to open up dispensaries to get their products in every single dispensary in Pennsylvania. That is great news. As Air Wellness also opens their 3rd Pennsylvania dispensary in Gibsonia, a suburb of Pittsburgh. This 8,000 square foot facility has 45 parking spaces and is designed to fit up to 30 point of sale stations. 30? In the retail shops in Ontario, we've got like 3 to 5 max. There's not going to be a single lineup in this place. That's awesome. The dispensary will employ 20 people from the local community and is located in the building that once housed King's Restaurant, an iconic family staple that has been closed since the beginning of the pandemic. Air Wellness will be the first dispensary located in Gibsonia and the surrounding area. It will feature curbside pickup and online reservations, a diverse product selection, and will be open 7 days a week. So it seems like companies are expanding well in Pennsylvania under the medical model. How about bringing adults online at some point soon? Well, Pennsylvania lawmakers build support for new cannabis legalization bill, which is great timing as sources are anticipating that Pennsylvania is going to legalize for adult use, hopefully next year in 2022, as 2 lawmakers are working to build support for cannabis legalization bill that they plan to introduce soon. In a memo sent to colleagues on Monday, Reps Jake Wheatley and Jan Frankel said the proposal will create a legal and regulatory framework structured to control and regulate the cultivation, processing, transportation, distribution, delivery, and sale at retail of cannabis and cannabis products. This comes as a bipartisan Senate duo is also in the process of crafting legislation to legalize cannabis across the Commonwealth, Dan Laughlin and Sharif Street announced some details of the proposal earlier this year, but the bill has yet to be formally introduced. Wheatley and Frankel said their upcoming measure will legalize possession and sale of up to 1 ounce of cannabis for adults 21 and older. It would establish a legislatively appointed cannabis regulatory control body to oversee the market. So that's great, and let's hope that in 2022 we definitely get this done, as well as Maryland, which is the other state. And then Trulieve is happy to announce the expiration of HSR Act waiting period for the proposed acquisition of Harvest Health, which is crazy to think that it's been a month only since this was announced and since we've seen MSO earnings. It's only been a month, although it feels like it's been a year. So keep that in mind. Time goes slow, but it's temporary. Announced the expiration of the 30-day waiting period under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Antitrust Improvement Act of 1976 in connection with the previously announced proposed acquisition. Trulieve CEO Kim Rivers commented, "Completion of the HSR milestone is exciting, and we will continue to work towards closing the strategic transaction. Upon closing, we expect to leverage the expertise and resources of the combined companies to realize meaningful scale and expansion for years to come." So basically just means that this transaction is still on track, and closing of the transaction remains subject to the satisfaction or waiver of all remaining conditions. The Harvest shareholder vote is expected to occur in the third quarter of 2021, and both companies continue to work towards obtaining all required regulatory approvals to get this done. So good news out of MSOs, at least. While out of Germany, my source Alfredo Pascual from Twitter announces that the public health insurance coverage of medical cannabis in Germany reached a record of 443 million euros in the first quarter of 2021, according to data just published by the German National Association of Statutory Health Insurance Funds, which is great news. And he adds that Q1 2021 saw an increase of 3.6 over Q4 of 2020 and was up 5.3% from Q1 2020. The quarter-over-quarter increase was particularly driven by flower sales, while extracts and isolates barely grew, which I think is great because it highlights the effectiveness of good old flower and contradicts what's often predicted without much evidence that the days of flowered are numbered. Because if we look at the breakdown, and this is just from my understanding in Germany, medical cannabis is covered by insurance. So you don't actually pay out of pocket, and you basically just place an order to the government, and then they cover it for you. So if we look, flower is represented in blue, extracts and preparations represented in orange, and then finished pharmaceutical products, so FDA-approved prescription drugs, covered in gray. So if we take a look from Q4 2020, Germans wanted 17.3 million worth of flower. In Q1 2021, Germans wanted 18.5 million worth of flower. So it seems it's increasing in popularity and going up. If we look at extracts and preparations, Germans wanted 14.7 million in Q4 of 2020. Then in Q1 2021, they wanted $15.2 million worth. So also going up in popularity. But if we take a look, finished pharmaceutical products, in Q4 2020, Germans wanted 10.9 million worth, but in Q1 2021, they only wanted 10.7 million worth. Interesting. So it seems like the desire for finished pharmaceutical products is going down as people are turning to more natural choices of flower and extracts. Love to see that. And although Germany is not growing as quickly as Florida, it's still good to see that people are more accepting towards the old natural route as opposed to the finished pharmaceutical route. And again, it's a work in progress, but I do like to see that we're at least heading up in the right direction. While an Australian cannabis company has done business with Canopy Growth to acquire a facility for just $20 million, but I want to use this as the perfect example to show you some history as to why it's so important to do the work and just read what you got to read in order to know what you're invested in, as opposed to buying these headlines as truth and expecting to get a good return on investment on everything. Because Australian cannabis company producer buys Canopy Growth Denmark facility for $20 million. Well, it seems like a steal in order to acquire a world-class, fully operational GMP medicinal cannabis cultivation and manufacturing facility in Denmark from Canopy Growth Corp, right? Well, if we scroll down for some more details, the $20 million acquisition of the 21,500 square foot cultivation and 4,000 square foot GMP manufacturing facility positions LGP as a leading Australian medical cannabis producer and owner of one of the largest and highest quality cannabis production facilities in Europe. Sounds great, right? Well, if we take a look back in May of 2019, Canopy Growth buys a German medical cannabis company for $343 million. That doesn't sound like much of a deal depending on what you're getting. Well, if we look into it, under the deal, the Ontario-based company has acquired C3 Cannabinoid Compound Co. And C3 has two manufacturing facilities specializing respectively in natural extraction and synthetic cannabinoid production. So I did try my best to find articles that connected the dots. I was not able to, but then young Justin on Twitter, as Canopy sells their Denmark manufacturing facility for $20 million, this manufacturing facility was acquired in the C3 acquisition for $343 million. And if we look at the breakdown of what C3's done for Canopy right now, they've got $2.8 million in cash, $15 million in other current assets, $8 million in property, plant, and equipment. But look at the goodwill. $287 million added to this in goodwill, What a terrible investment. And that is why a lot of what Canopy did in 2019 and 2020 investment-wise has not panned out, and why their share price has not reflected any sort of growth, because they've not been able to grow effectively based on some terrible management in the past. While former officers and directors of CannTrust, the one Canadian LP that you could not trust, charged with Securities Act offences. Following a joint investigation by the OSC and Royal Canadian Mounted Police Integrated Market Enforcement Team, 3 former directors and officers at CannTrust Holdings have been charged with offences under the Securities Act in Ontario, which is great to see because rarely do you ever see white-collar criminals get held accountable for what they did. Long story short, these allegations relate to efforts to conceal the illegal growing of cannabis at CannTrust over a 10-month period in 2018 and 2019. So obviously, I'll give you a bit more. During this time, the 3 accused did not disclose to investors that approximately 50% of the total growing space at CannTrust's facility in Hallum, Ontario was not licensed by Health Canada. How do you screw that up? So that is just an example of the mismanagement in Canada. You could say amateurish management compared to what we're seeing in the US right now. So just wanted to highlight that. At least, Mark Litwin, Eric Paul, and Peter Aceto were held accountable for how they misled investors. So it's good to see that this actually happens in Canada, maybe not so often in the US. And lastly, to round this off, providing that Cantor Fitzgerald's Wednesday series will sit down with Boris Jordan, Executive Chairman of Trulieve Holdings, next Wednesday, June 30th, 2021 at 11 to 11:45. Now, Boris has a wealth of investment experience, and as someone that wants to be a professional investor, I like to listen to someone that's done that before and learn from them. So it'll be interesting, especially like Boris and other CEOs in the space. No one has the expertise that they do. So anything that we can hear from them that helps us develop our understanding, the better. And so that is it for this week's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns. Let me know. I'd be happy to address them because, again, although we've seen the prices go down, look for the trend to change in July just based on all the positive sentiment we're seeing. It seems as if the second half is going to be a lot more rewarding than the first half of 2021. But regardless, if you enjoyed this, please leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great day, everybody.